Hey there, welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we will try to understand the backend ecosystem. So right before writing a lot of codes, let's try to understand how we can accommodate the backend ecosystem and what are the things which it's going to be first priority. So you can see our user can talk to our backend server, but with the help of website. So definitely what we need to do, we need to expose all of the endpoints in a way. Maybe it can be GraphQL, or it can be a RESTful API, or it can be some other form of like communication pattern, right? So in our case, definitely we are going to use some kind of like RESTful API for a while. But while it comes to the RESTful API communication, then our front-end application has to understand like what kind of the error messages or what kind of response we're sending. There's certain you can say discipline we need to maintain. So our front-end application can understand like we need to grab the first thing, as an example, the response, and inside the response there will be a kind of data object, and maybe besides that we can have a message and we can have a kind of status code. So this is the way we can maintain like the symmetric communications between like front end and back end. There is a kind of suitable contract it's going to be established, right? And while it comes to exposing all of the endpoints and APIs, then what we need to do, some of the endpoints and APIs we need to protect it, right? As an example, from the users, the sign up or login, these are the two endpoints, or maybe forgot password, right? So these are the three endpoints. It's going to be public, right? Which is, that means you no need to any kind of have the authentication for accessing all of these endpoints. As an example, for products, get products, right? Or maybe get product by ID, right? So all of these things, or maybe categories. So there are similar type of endpoints we need to protect it. Like some of them are going to be exposed publicly. For products, getting the product by ID, or the categories, those are public, or rest of other things maybe it's going to be private. Or maybe customer should not supposed to create the product, right? Or customer should not supposed to have the ability for editing the product, right? Only customer allowed to view certain products or certain stuff, all right? And eventually, while it comes to the admin also, then we need to assign certain rules, right? So those are the things we need to keep in mind right there. While it comes to the database also, if you see here in the source code, right? Let's go to the source code. Here inside the source directory, we are keeping one directory that is called repository. So what repository it's going to play the role here? Because you can see like while our application flow is going to come into place, then our application is reaching to the user routes here. Maybe what we can do, we can just like expose one kind of prefix also here. You can say a prefix will be API, let's say B1, right? So that means like while we are going to serve this application, all of the routes, it's going to be applicable for API v1/users as an example. So while we're going to visit our, or maybe looking for the request or response, then what we are going to do, we'll be going to say HTTP TP:/localhost API v1 users. So this kind of mechanism we are going to use throughout of our application, so we can fairly shift it to a version 2 or version 3 without breaking the previous version. So this kind of an advanced technique we are going to use right here. This kind of techniques we are going to use to throw out of the application. So which is going to help us out to run the old version as well as and the new version as well as, which is potentially not using by the normal people or maybe normal users. They are just simply exposing localhost as an example. This part is completely out of the box, right? So in this case, you can imagine, let's say you need to expose something which is going to be potentially your user version, right? Which is you wanna test it out in your somewhere else. It's not going to be maybe staging server, or maybe in the production also. You just wanna route maybe some of the traffic to version 2 or some of the traffic maybe for version 1. Then if you're not going to use this kind of mechanism, then it's going to be really going to be tough for you to introduce this kind of features. All right, so and another point is while we're going to visit our user routes, you can see directly we can create the user. So here, what we are going to do, we're going to take the advantage of Fastify, where Fastify is going to do auto validation for us, right? And it's going to help us out to the logging and monitoring all of this stuff. And if you can see here, if you're going to run the application yarn dev, if you see here, then you can see log level is 30, right? And host name is this one, where exactly the host is running. And message is something else, right? So whatever message we are printing it out. So what we're going to do, as soon as we are going to receive any kind of request right here, then we are going to log certain amount of data. As an example, to some of the requests, we're going to log it right here as a form of normal log. And some of the logs we are going to consider as a kind of like, maybe debug log or maybe error log, right? So which is potentially going to help us out to keep or backtrack of all of the errors or any bug is going to happen in our application by looking at certain monitoring tool. So as I have explained throughout of the whole course, we are going to add many tools. As an example, we are going to integrate our one of the best monitoring tool that's called the Grafana and Prometheus. We are going to integrate right here. So now what we can do, as you can see, like we have already one Docker Compose file right here. So let's try to create one more file, which is going to potentially help us out to spin our application in Docker container. So let's try to do that. So in this case, in the top level, in the root level, outside of the source directory, I'm going to create one file that is called Docker file. So Docker file without extension, right? So now let's try to write some code here. Perfect. So now let's try to understand what this Docker file does. So as you can see here, Node 20, it says like, we're going to use the official Node version 20 image for this whole application, right? And here we are setting the working directory as app. So that means like inside the container, there will be a directory app where we are going to put all of the source code. Then we are copying all of the package.json or maybe log file, right? So everything we are just like copying it here. Then finally we are running the npm install, so which is going to install all of the dependencies from our package.json file. Then you can see there is a kind of copy ... So this is going to be like copy all of the files, whatever the source file right here, it is going to copy inside this app directory. So by saying node options experimental module, this is going to be not required because we are going to use the node version 20. So that's not required. If you're using less than 20, then definitely you need to mention right here. So this is going to be automatically available from 20 onward, right? What this CMD does. So CMD is a command, right? So which is going to spin the node and looking for the source directory index.js, right? Perfect. So now our Docker file is ready to spin. So what we are going to do, we're going to introduce another service here in the Docker Compose. You can see we have only one service right now that is called database service, right? Which is we have like kept a name department DB. Then another service we are going to introduce right here, that is going to be our backend service as an example, right? There we will be point the image as a kind of PROM image to our Docker file. Then we're going to spin the whole service. Then our application can talk directly to our database DB itself. But here, a couple of more things we need to add. That is going to be network configuration and all. Those are the things we are going to cover in upcoming lectures, right? Perfect. Then you understood like what are the things we are going to do right here in the backend side, and what kind of ecosystem we are going to maintain in terms of like accommodating all of these things for security side and making all of the modules, and what kind of contract we will be going to expose to back into our front-end application. Perfect. Then see you right there in the next lecture. Thank you.